Good morning, good morning, good morning. Glad to be with you on this Tuesday morning where we're going to talk about making some informed decisions, basic knowledge when planning a funeral or cremation service. Planning a funeral or cremation involves making many important decisions, but you don't have to do it alone. You need to know that. We as funeral professionals are here to help you every step of the way. But in order to help you, there are some things that you must know so that you can come to tell us. Because honestly, our job is to facilitate the wishes of you and your family. That's all we're here to do, is to facilitate. We will guide you, we will give you some information, but we can't make those final decisions for you. And that's what this episode is going to be about today because, well, I'm hearing a lot of things because, as we've said in previous episodes, we're dealing with a generation that hasn't dealt with death before. So I choose to educate. I'd like to be one of these professionals to take the time to show you and teach you exactly how funerals work and what to expect when you call a funeral home. Now, as you know, we always do a catchy type of entrance where we show you some things from around the world. And today is no different. I have a couple of videos that I'd like to show you before we get into this episode, just to show you some different things that happen around the country, around the globe, around the world. Here's our first one. Again, extreme posing. Yeah, this is really big down in the islands. This funeral home is in Puerto Rico. And the mother, as you see, wanted the son to sit in a chair from home to be posed in. Let you see it one more time. But again, as I tell you, the embalmer needs to know this before the embalming is done. Because once it's done and the chemical is set up and the body is posed, it's difficult to change it. Yeah, posing. What are your thoughts? If you're not watching live, if you catch it in the replay, leave it in the comments. What are your thoughts? I'd like to engage some conversation. Maybe some things can be done differently that you've never thought about. Okay. Now, that's very touching. A double funeral. Both coming out side by side with the funeral attendants in step, top hats. And as you take a closer look, these caskets are wrapped. The ultimate in personalization, the wrapped caskets. That's something that we now offer here as well at the M.E. Fisher Funeral Home. So if you're inquiring about a wrapped casket, yes, we can do that for you. No problem. We have a young lady local that came by here. Check out our website, our Facebook page. I put a post up of a casket that she did that we have here on display. Now, just check this out. Again. That happens every day. Now, let's talk about one or two things. Yes, people can get overwhelmed and very emotional at the funeral. It happens. Are we to judge them? No, no way. We don't know what they're feeling and what their relationship was. But let's talk about taking pictures. Taking pictures of the deceased and it is not your immediate next of kin is not the best idea in the world. Think about the privacy and respect of that family. Would you necessarily want someone to take a picture of your deceased loved one, put it on social media, and the whole world happens to see that? Just something to think about. Just a little something to think about. Now, let's get into the episode a little bit now. We're going to talk about making informed decisions. The first thing, when you call the funeral home, one of the things you need to tell us is the type of service that you'd like to have. We have no way of knowing what your loved one may have wanted. We may probably have never discussed it with them unless we were close and they come by. But normally it's the family's responsibility to let us know what it is that they would like to have done with their loved one. Now, do we have the conversation anymore with our family members to even talk about that when we know death is coming? That hard conversation. That's something that I think we have been avoiding. Even when we're told things by doctors, and I know God can work miracles, but if a doctor tells us the worst, we should start making preparations versus running away from it. One of the things to do is to start talking to your loved one, to ask them, what would you like when that time comes? Not saying it's going to come right now, but what would you like? That can help you a lot when you call the funeral home because you already have had that discussion. Now, again, I'm going to review the types of services. We can have a complete funeral called a traditional, where we bury in a cemetery. We can have a funeral followed by cremation, where after the funeral, the remains is cremated. We can have a cremation with a memorial service. We can have a cremation with no type of service. Those are the basic things that we do if we're not shipping a body out to another funeral home. If one is being shipped in, we then still need to know, what are we going to do with the remains? Where are we going to bury it? Are we going to cremate it once it gets here? Are you going to have a funeral before that cremation? These are all some things that the family must know when contacting us so that we can then help them the best way possible. Again, the funeral home is here only to facilitate your wishes, not to tell you what you want. Another form of disposition that doesn't happen often is body donation. You can contact the Virginia Anatomical Board if that's one of your wishes. There's a screening process. If you qualify, the state anatomical program will receive your remains. Your remains will be used for medical study. In embalming school, that's how we learn to embalm. Most of your doctors, they learn on a cadaver. And when that process is done, the state then provides the cremation and sends the cremains back to you. That's another option that a lot of people don't know about, and we can have a discussion on that one day, the process of donation. Yeah, I will do one on that because we need to know. Excuse me. Another thing the family has to know when they come to the funeral home, and I've mentioned this before as well, is all vital statistic information, or the information that we need to put on the death certificate has to come from somewhere. Again, because we don't know this relative, they're not related to us, most of these questions we cannot answer. So we're going to need you to do a little basic research on the deceased to let us know some things to complete the death certificate. Another thing we do is cancel Social Security numbers with that death certificate filing. So yes, we need your Social Security number in order to cancel it in the system. It's part of the job that we do. To make an informed decision, we need to know these things. Another thing we need to know is which cemetery you may want to go. If you choose a traditional funeral with burial, you must tell us the cemetery. We can let you know the options, but we certainly cannot pick one for you. Each has their advantages and disadvantages. I'm not going to put one over the other. Depends upon the need of the family. Now, when selecting a cemetery, you must realize they have a contract as well. You're going to have to go over there to sign some paperwork. You're going to have to select a grave space. You're going to have to discuss payment options with them as well. Most cemeteries do not have payment plans. They require all up front. Sometimes they will work with you, but you're going to have to negotiate that with the cemetery. That is not the funeral home's responsibility. Back home where I come from in Petersburg, Virginia, every funeral home did own a cemetery. So you had a little leeway if you had the remains, and you could work with them. But it's not like that in this area. So it's something else you need to think about. Now, one of the bigger things you need to budget for. You need to have an idea how much things are going to cost. And I'm going to switch scenes right now. Say you're looking for a complete funeral, and these are our package prices, and I know my colleagues, competitors may look at it and lower their prices to try to get remains. Things happen in this industry. I don't care. These are our prices. They're on our website every day. But as you see, a bronze burial package starts at $49.95. That's what the funeral home prices will be. If you want burial, you then have to consider how much the cemetery is going to cost. Green lawn is one of the least expensive, around $1,500 for a weekday. So as you're seeing here, it starts to add up. Yes, it does. I'm going to now show you our cremation packages so you can just get an idea of what those prices can look like. Because again, as we say, budgeting is a big part of funeral service. As you see, a direct cremation starts at $1,500, but things can go as higher than that. So, again, before we get started, we need to know how much things are going to cost. That can help you in coming to the funeral home, like with almost any other major purchase that you make. You kind of know how much you want to spend before you leave the house. When you go out to buy a TV, a computer, or whatever, you kind of have in mind the price range. Then when you get to that store to make that purchase, you then select within that range to see what is the best value for your budget. When purchasing a funeral, it's pretty much the same. As you think through the wishes of your loved one, seeing what is truly affordable versus what my wishes are, it makes it a bit easier. But try to establish a budget in your mind before going to a funeral home. It'll make your life a lot easier and take a lot of the stress away. Now, let's talk about the importance of celebrating a person's life. In the human psychology, as a person passes, we cannot emotionally process it fully until there's some type of celebration. Through history, even in the biblical days, we heard of funerals, we heard of weddings, we heard of birthday celebrations. As someone is celebrated when they come in this world, the world believes they should be celebrated in some fashion when they leave this world. A lot of times I'll see older people that say in their 80s got no family to take care of them. They were placed in a nursing home. Due to no activity in the community, they may stay there 5 or 6 years. And then when they do pass, a lot of people will say, I thought they were dead already. I hadn't seen them. Seeing that remains, viewing that remains before final disposition or cremation is part of a healing process of grief. Most families that do have some type of viewing with the grief better. Down the road, they tend to not have regrets about not doing certain things. And it's a healing process to you, the family member, to go through that process. A lot of people say, well, I don't want a funeral, I don't want to be buried, it's not enough ground and not enough earth. If everybody died in America today, we all could be buried in the state of Texas. Single burial. A lot of crypts now are double and triple burial. So we have plenty of ground space to bury. We just have chosen some alternative methods because our lifestyles have changed and so have our values and our morals. That's to be the truth. So we're not judging, we're not pointing fingers in any direction, but just to let you know it has been proven scientifically that viewing the remains does help you through grief, and you tend to grieve a little bit less. Now I'm going to answer another question, because we're only going to stay on here about 30 minutes today, if that long. Every day, pretty much now, we get asked a question. Mr. Fisher, do you all have a payment plan? Do you have a payment plan? And I think on my first or second live, I told you no way I do a payment plan. Funerals don't work like that. Well, funerals may have to work like that. We're working now in an economy where a lot of people don't have. And really, they haven't had since 2008 when we had a recession. Because when the world was in a recession, certain communities then were in a depression. And as soon as we came out of it and it got a little better, what happened? We had COVID. The world shut down. People were paid to stay at home. Did you ever think that'll happen in America? You get a check to stay at home. Funeral directors didn't get a check to stay at home. We worked harder than ever. School stopped. So the economy kind of bumped. Everything bumped, and we're getting back on track. And what I'm learning is now, life insurance was one of the first things to go in the midst of these tragedies we had, because people had to survive. Let's be truthful. If it's between eating, keeping my lights on, feeding my child, and paying the funeral home, come on, you got to survive. Yeah, so after talking to God, praying on it, God said, yeah. The few people now that you do allow credit do pay off. So why not help a family in need with a payment plan? So we've developed what I call the 70-30 plan. Say you come in, you call, you want a basic funeral. As you saw, it was $49.95. Put that in the computer. It automatically shows you. We'll need a deposit of $34.96.50. And we will then credit you $14.98.50. As we look down under the values, we're going to be sticking with an annual percentage rate of 7%. Now, if you check your credit card, if you got a Citibank card or Capital One of those kind, you may be paying 19 to 24% on every purchase. And they're billion-dollar companies. We're just a small business sitting on the corner of Hampton and Madison. So why did I pick 7? God's number completion. We're basing everything on a 12-month cycle, and then we'll let you tell us the payments. You want 6, 9, 12, 15, or 18. Nothing we will extend past 18 months, just can't do it. But say on this here, $14.98.50, you said 6 months. You can see over here, from today, the payment would start on the 18th of next month. It'll always be 30 days from the date that we do the contract. The payment schedule will be $260.05 a month for 6 months. Say, Mr. Fisher, that's a little bit too much. I can't afford that much. Let's see what 9 months looks like. So at 9 months, it'll be $173.04. Let's say you want to put a little extra in per month. say you're going to put 25 extra to that payment. As you can see, your payment now goes to 173.04, and it takes off 1 month. Now you only pay eighth versus 9. As I scroll down, we will even give you the complete payment schedule. So every month that you make a payment, you can see how your balance is coming down. And on this small amount, the interest is only $52.01. That's all. Now, I think this is a way to help. Let's look at this with a direct cremation. That was $1,500. And let's take the extra payment off. And on $1,500, we would require $1,050 down, leaving you with $450. And let's say we'll do this for 6 months. That would be $78.09 per month, with a total interest of $18.55. That's called our 70-30 plan. Do we just use it willy-nilly with everybody? No, we try not to. But if we realize that you do need help, we're willing to help you. Now, with this 70-30 plan, I'm going to be totally honest with you. It's only going to be for our lower packages and not the most extravagant. If you come in and want a legacy package for $15,000, you should be able to afford it. Yeah, I'm going to make another analogy. People like to see things like Bentleys, Maybach, however you pronounce it, Bugatti, Ferrari, Rolls Royce. Then you have Cadillac, Chevrolet, Ford. Most of the lower model cars that I just mentioned will always have a financing option. 3 years on up to 6, 7 years if that's what you want. But if you have ever known anyone to purchase one of the elite vehicles that I mentioned initially, they don't take payment plans. Those cars are custom made and cost hundreds of thousands into the millions. They're not going to finance that. They're purchased through wire transfers. A large deposit is sent. They start making your vehicle, and before it is delivered, your bank has wired the remaining balance. People that are really wealthy will pay the whole thing up front. How do I know this? I have a cousin that sells them in North Carolina. So if anybody wants one of those high-dollar vehicles, I have a first cousin, and that's what he does every day, all day, up and down the East Coast. So I'm going to recap just a little bit. In order to make an informed decision, first, you need to know some things to come to tell us. You need to know the type of service that you want for your loved one. You need to have a budget for how much you're willing or needing to invest in this celebration to represent your loved one the way they would like to be represented. You need to already know what cemetery you want to go to, things like that. Again, the vital statistics are very important. If you want a complete death certificate, you're going to have to give us that information. How would we know the mother's maiden name of your deceased loved one? Where would we get that information from? What head would we pull it out of? How would we know their highest level of education if they've been in the military honor and or do military honors? So in order to make an informed decision, you first must be prepared with the necessary information that's going to be required so that we can facilitate and give you that dignified quality service that you've always wanted. It's 11:55. I had you for 25 minutes. Don't have anyone on the stream right now. I'm going to call this one a day. We're going to talk about donation, though, because a lot of people don't realize that is an option now. To be placed on the list of the anatomical board, there are some very strict guidelines. But I will research that and definitely do a live on that so we can discuss donation. Because if that's the route you have to go, no, you're helping modern medicine, science, and funeral service just grow. Because through that donation is where we learn our trade in school. Because we just can't walk into a funeral home day one and practice when you're paying your money. This is Mark Fisher, Emmy Fisher Funeral Home, signing off right now. Have a great day.